Kyle Pitts, like my partner over here would say, zoinks! Fantasy football playoffs underway. We'll talk all about it right now. The Manchild Show with Boy Green live starts right now.
Let's go! It's time for the talk to you. 'Cause it's all we're gonna do. And Boy Green is always on the scene. And we're gonna always bring to the live streaming. So get ready. Get ready, 'cause here they come.
And I'm ready for a lot of things. Man, I'm glad I'm sitting on the sideline in 2 out of 3 leagues. Just watching everybody else beat each other up. Oh, Boy Green's got a little special dance going on today. Do you only have Pitts in the Champs League, by the way? Is that the only place you have him? Do you have him across any other leagues?
I have him in multiple leagues, baby.
You do? Oh, that's god-awful. Kyle, typically the Pitts. Not so pitsy this year, and a 45-plus burger last night in full PPR leagues. Oh, my gosh.
You know what's crazy, Lerch? I think it was last week you said, let's go over some of the fantasy trades. I acquired Kyle Pitts via trade this year, baby.
Yes, you did. It's actually been a pretty good trade for you. That's been one of the few good trades you've had this year. Today's broadcast, by the way, brought to you by our friends at Box Drop, Syracuse, the Mattress, and Sofa Outlet. All right, let's bring in the guy that really matters when we talk fantasy football from RotoWire.com. It's the one, the only, the indomitable Joe Bartel. What's up, Joseph? How are you?
Let's give you guys some numbers here. I was looking over this morning, just watching the carnage that was Kyle Pitts fantasy-wise. Kyle Pitts' total last night ended up being, in normal leagues, about 41 PPR points. That was 7% of Kyle Pitts' total career fantasy points all in one night. Only 11% of people in fantasy championships actually played Kyle Pitts. So I think that says a lot more about Boy Green's roster building, that he was forced to use Kyle Pitts relative to the rest of the league. And of course, it benefits him because of everything benefits him as well, too. So massive fantasy day. I have had a very bad fantasy season. You guys have heard me get very angry at various points this year. I at least haven't won it. I didn't go against Kyle Pitts in my 5 playoff games this week. I had 3 games, though, where I played Bucky Irving, naturally the only person in the entire game that underperformed. And in the 2 that I didn't play Bucky Irving, I went against Bijan Robinson and Mike Evans. So I'm not quite to the level of if I went against Kyle Pitts, the anger that I'm at, but I'm pretty annoyed at how fantasy has started for me on this Thursday.
That's for sure. Lerch, do you want to share some of your numbers, perhaps?
What numbers? Oh, yes, you're right. Oh, yes. I have a very important announcement to make, Joe, since we are live here. We promised in our next live show I would do that. So we have crossed the 400 subscriber wall.
Yes.
Bravo. Thanks to everybody who's joined this community. We've been here such a short time, and yet people have really embraced us, and we're really, really proud of our very modest numbers at this point. We hope someday we'll have a mountain of numbers to look at, but we're over 400 now at 408 subscribers. We're doing some incentivizing, Joe, all kinds of giveaways. I've got a golf club that's going to go out the door when we get to 500. It's worth $400. That we still haven't made it there, but maybe we're going to get there sooner rather than later. But this Bobby Mercer autographed baseball, right out of my personal collection, beautifully autographed. I got it from Mercer myself in this nice little glass container, a little plastic container, I really should say, but it protects the ball very nicely. We promised at 400 we would give this away, and Boy Green and I off air before today's show did our drawing, and we'd like to congratulate Joey Matesic, Matesic, a subscriber of ours. Joey, congratulations. You are walking away with this Bobby Mercer autographed baseball, and we will ship this directly to you for the holidays. Congrats, Joey, and thanks to everybody for joining in. And don't worry if you didn't win the Mercer ball. There are plenty of other giveaways between now and 500, including the penultimate golf club going out the door at 500, so you can still get in on it all. Don't you worry. It's absolutely free. Just click subscribe right now. Joe, you got
is it bad that when I heard we're going to give you the numbers, I thought this was going to be a Brandon Aubrey line that he actually finished kicker 1, and that
would have been hilarious,
significantly higher. That's what I was expecting. When you're like, all right, Lerch, give him the numbers. Like, okay, I have to hear this again.
No Aubrey number for you today, Joe. I have the week off, Joe. I'm in the Barca Lounger right now, feet up. Actually, I do have a matchup in the Chumps League, and it's a good one of 2 very, very equal teams. this young lady, Amanda, who's been in our league for many years,
Oh,
and
yes.
she's a diehard Cowboys fan. So I have her team. She always names it. I forget what it is this year, but she always has a Cowboys slanted name. So nothing like beating up the old Cowboy fan if you're a Giants fan. So I'm kind of into that. I got nice 11 points out of my kicker last night. McLaughlin is my kicker on that team, but she also got a nice night out of Bijan. she's got Bijan in that league. I have Bijan,
Dallas
obviously, in the
Doomsday.
League,
Dallas Doomsday. There you
yeah,
go.
Dallas
That's her name.
Doomsday is her name. So we'll see. We're in a battle. It looks like it's like we're both right now projected into 140. So this is going to be it's going to come right down to the wire. It's going to be a big one.
Yeah, so it should be a lot of fun. So again, a quick reminder: anyone who subscribes to the channel, you continue to be eligible for all the giveaways moving forward. So stay subscribed. Make sure you do that for the great content, also for the sweet giveaway action as well. So Joe, mostly everyone are now in the thick of their fantasy playoffs now, as this is all coming together. I'm curious because we've talked about a lot of these strategies. We did it last week as well here. What is the balance of upside plays versus floor plays? Because even like I'll be honest, I traded away a player earlier this season, Khalil Shakir, in my mind. When I drafted him in fantasy, I'm like, you know what? I don't know what his ceiling is, but man, I feel confident that there's just going to be a volume floor that every week I'm going to be able to lean on, and that's the only thing the doctor's looking for here. So that's what I bought, and that's what I was hoping to get. And I ended up trading him in the middle of the season, and it did not prove to be true. When I traded away, he ended up not having that same floor that I was thinking. So even what I say may not be true. But, Joe, when we go into this, what is that battle versus swinging for the fences and then playing it safe, in theory, and playing for a floor play? Because with a fantasy roster, you don't just have one player playing. You're playing a quarterback. You're playing 2 or 3 wide receivers, playing 2 or 3 running backs, a tight end, a flex, a defense. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle. How do you weigh that balance? Is it all upside swing? Hey, we're in the playoffs, lose or go home? Or is there a balance to the points that get accumulated throughout the full week?
Well, let's tackle this question, and I'll add an additional part on here because Badshaw actually asked a good question in the chat. What defense should I go for on waivers this week? So we mentioned this last week when we were having the conversation. And overall, this matters for everyone in the fantasy postseason. If you're doing consolation brackets that matter, okay, whatever else. I want to structure my bench, and this is the first part, is I want to structure my bench to remove any sort of asset somebody else might be able to get off of waivers. We mentioned Justin Jackson a couple weeks ago when he filled in for Austin Eckler like 3 years ago and ended up being a league winner for that week. I think Blake Corum has been the very obvious example for it. Well, thankfully he's on my bench, so none of you guys get to benefit that, and I get to sit there at 7-7 and not have any sort of value of that whatsoever. But like there are those types of Jalen Wright, for example. I want my bench to be stashed with that, or blocking people with quarterbacks. Maybe there's a quarterback upgrade somebody can make in the playoffs. Or in this case with Badshaw, the defense as well too. So Jacksonville right now, the Jaguars defense is, I think, in a really good spot rest of the postseason, especially now with Phillip Rivers or Riley Leonard as the quarterback for the Colts. Probably get into that situation a little bit more later in the show or broadcast. I think Philadelphia was available in a bunch of my leagues. I was kind of surprised by that. They were the obvious pickup against the Raiders. I might potentially roster 3 defenses if it means I'm blocking the rest of my league mates from getting the obvious streaming candidate defense. Like that's how I'm structuring my bench to really remove any sort of value that somebody else might be able to claim or get at that point. The way you're actually putting your roster together really depends on how things go. And for case in point, Jamie going against Kyle Pitts. I mean, he's already lost. There's no way that Jamie comes back. Jamie, I'm trying to put the Bartle stink on you so that you can have any sort of shot in this, but there's no way, Jamie. You're already done. However, if I'm staring down the barrel of a 45-point one player thing, I'm every upside player imaginable in there. I don't like playing DK Metcalf because for like 5 of 7 weeks, he's been really disappointing. Last week, of course, he was great when he was on my bench, for example. Like I would be playing the high upside guys like DK Metcalf, or maybe there's an opportunity for more touchdowns being scored out of Kareem Hunt, for example, against the Chargers. I like there's ways to say the Khalil Shakirs of the world. I don't want to play in these scenarios. Or if I'm looking at the Vegas totals right now, who's going to be projected to score the most points, can I get an Andre Yoshivas and see if he can score a touchdown, a couple catches, whatever else? When I am trailing, and there's going to be a lot of people like that, whether they're solo against Bijan Robinson or solo against Mike Evans, like you might feel like you want to make a bit of a leap up with that. I'm structured that way. Otherwise, though, I really think the floor can be mixed in with your explosive players. Like, you know who the guys are that are supposed to score a bunch of points. If they don't do that, you've probably lost. I don't think you need to go chasing that otherwise. Having a Khalil Shakir and giving the 12 points that he might give you, there's nothing wrong with that if you have other players on your roster that can exceed that or you expect it to do it. So I'm structuring that way if I'm trying to make up a big deficit. Like example, Kyle Pitts going nuclear here to kick off the fantasy playoffs. But otherwise, I think you kind of go with what has gotten you there, or what you feel comfortable getting you to the championship.
And by the way, Joe, I just want to welcome you to the 3 defense on the roster club. It's an elite fraternity, and I'm glad that you're joining us. So thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Joe, what about, we've got, 3 weeks to play with here. We could talk about the immediate. I don't know how far down the line you've gone already in your mind, because there's a lot to think about in all the leagues that you're in. But are there some guys out there that you think have that swing, that you could swing into your flex, or you can swing into that wide receiver 3 spot, or you can swing into that running back 3 spot that, that has the kind of upside in a given week because of a matchup that you say, all right, man, this is worth the gamble here? Because I know for my own team, like, you always have strengths and weaknesses. In the Champs League, for instance, I have, 2 solid running backs. I never have to worry about those 2 guys. It's plug and play. Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, go for it. When I had Kyron Williams on the team, hey, plug those 3 guys in. Mm-hmm. I got Jackson Smith and Jigba now that I acquired in the trade. Okay, he's a lock and load. But then my other spots, that I'm always like, could I get a little more out of somebody? I mean, look at this guy with Michael Wilson and what he's gotten in recent weeks. So is there a Wilson-like guy out there that could really, really benefit a team if you were really keeping your eyes open?
So it's a 2-part question again. The waiver wire, I don't know about you guys, but I think the waiver wire has been one of the worst it's been in recent years, where you just can't find. Like Michael Wilson was, Boy Green picks him up on a Thursday afternoon because we heard news that Marvin Harrison suffered a very serious and random injury, right? Like that was the only reason Michael Wilson has come to be. And kudos to Boy Green for being on top of things. That's of the many things that annoys me when I play fantasy against him. That's not one of them. That's just a good smart play. But like, you think about the guys that have been the biggest benefactors of the year. There was a point where Trey Tucker for the Raiders had that explosive 40-point game. Everyone was chasing that, and that ended up being not true. You're trying to guess the Parker Washingtons or the Chimere DKs of the world. That's what I was doing. That never worked out. Like, I think this has been a really, really frustrating waiver wire period. So again, I'll go back to if there aren't many options available during the standard portion of the season, the Bashal Tutons of the world, and I mentioned Jalen Wright earlier for the Dolphins, those types of players who would immediately jump in the case of an injury happening, like a Michael Wilson scenario. That's all that I'm trying to do, even if I'm not playing them. Like in your case, Jim, like you have multiple running backs. Theoretically, you don't want to have somebody else in the flex there. As long as you're removing it from everybody else's opportunity to go ahead and do so, that is a win for you. And I don't see any obvious examples at receiver. I didn't think Kyle Pitts was going to be able to do this. I actually was asked on one of my terrestrial radio hits yesterday, well, Drake London's out. How good is Kyle Pitts going to be? I'm like, well, he's got like a floor of 12 points. He never scores touchdowns. I don't think Kirk Cousins is all that good. I couldn't have been more wrong. So maybe I'm not the right person to ask, but the way the waiver wire has been this season, I don't know if there's one defining guy or one that I think would be able to jump in, even from a playoff perspective, where maybe sometimes seeding will have these guys bench starters in week 17. The way the NFL has went this year, there isn't one guy or one team that's going to be out there and have everything locked up by week 17 or even 18. Like I think everything is going to come down to the wire, and therefore there just isn't value off the waiver wire over the past month, and I think even longer now.
You mentioned the Falcons there, so I'll go back to that just for a second. I really thought that Darnell Mooney maybe could get a little pop, especially with London out. That has not happened, Joe. I have rostered him on a couple teams. I'd be like, okay, I'm not playing that guy now. That's learn my lesson, man. Like he got a few points last night, but again, didn't get to double digits. I mean, in a game where you just see opportunity, it doesn't happen. So yeah, I agree with you. It's been a barren wasteland, that waiver wire. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, almost 60 points scored between the two teams, and Darnell Mooney, who's, I think, very conventionally assumed to be at least the second best pass catcher when healthy on the team, does hardly anything. And I think it goes back to Mooney is not healthy and hasn't been healthy all year. There was a report that was, I think, released a couple weeks ago that he was dealing with a fractured shoulder or something that happened during training camp that the Falcons just didn't reveal. And that's the other part of this, is that I can't trust any NFL teams with injuries. Now, think about your guy, Josh Jacobs. It doesn't matter this week, but he had a DNP both Wednesday and Thursday. He went in for a second MRI. I don't know about you guys. When I have a bone bruise, I don't really need to go look at MRIs multiple times. Like, there's clearly something else happening, and the Packers aren't telling us that. And the Packers are one of the better teams in terms of documenting the different injuries. Some of the Buccaneers and 49ers, and we mentioned the Falcons earlier. I think the way the NFL is announcing and making these injury informations available is part of the reason why this waiver wire has been so bleak, because you're either speculating because you have the opportunity to do so, or you're basically just trying to stick with what your roster has, and it's not allowing opportunities to go ahead and shuffle things through because you might have to sit on your stop. Like it's If you could tell, I'm frustrated with especially how the NFL has done things, and I think this year in particular, it's really gotten to a head with a lot of how the information is revealed with injuries.
Well, tell those Packers guys they can sit down. They can sit Josh Jacobs this week. Just let him sit a week. He could use the rest, man. Give him a week off. He could use it. I got a week off. Let Josh have a week off. It'd be great. We'll bring him back fresh next week. Go ahead, Boy Green.
That's beautiful. No, I'm just going to continue to encourage the fans throughout today's broadcast. We will eventually get to all your questions. Sometimes they'll just pop in with things that we're just generally talking about here. But light up the comment section with your questions. We'll get to all those before we depart with our fantasy football expert from RotoWire.com, the one and only Joseph Bartel here on the program. Joe, I mean, with how long you've done this, you've seen almost everything. And then Philip Rivers on his 44th birthday says, "Hey, Dad, got it. I'll play some football." And now all of a sudden we thought like, oh, okay, well, Riley, that's cute. But like Riley Leonard obviously is going to start this week. And Philip Rivers is sort of that
emergency guy.
Right. But all Colts reporters, especially Stephen Holder from ESPN, said, oh, no, by all accounts, everything I'm seeing, they are clearly getting him ready to play, which means Philip Rivers was on his couch last week, and now he's going to be starting. I don't imagine many people with their fantasy playoff lives are on the line are throwing Rivers into the lineup, but the question is everyone else around. Jonathan Taylor, how is that impacted? Michael Pittman Jr., any Alec Pierce action, of course, Lerch's boy, Tyler Warren. So what's the ripple effect if Philip Rivers actually is the starter this weekend against Seattle?
Yeah, how bad is Riley Leonard that they are bringing a guy that was coaching high school football, and because he was coaching their offense, they feel better about that than Riley Leonard? It's I don't know. You're right. I have seen a lot. I have a pretty decent memory with a lot of things. I don't recall a time where we've ever ran into this before, and it's a lot of like outside of fantasy football reasons that this happened, right? The Colts, well, we're past NFL trade deadline, so you can't go for a Flacco or somebody else like that. Most of the waiver wire options are already picked up by teams that would be competing and want to have a quality enough backup. The Colts having 2 first-round picks tied to that Sauce Gardner trade mean that they really can't make any moves in the offseason, so there isn't really any reason to go ahead and develop Riley Leonard. If anything, you want to develop Anthony Richardson, but oh wait, he also has that really freak injury, and he's going to be out as well too this week. I don't remember a time where this ever happened. I'm entirely nervous about the Colts offense. This seems like one of the worst decisions any organization could possibly make, and I understand out of desperation why you choose to do so, because this Riley Leonard guy is just so atrociously bad, right? I mean, that's where, I mean, and your team kind of in the same spot with the Brady Cook dude. Well, it doesn't matter if the Jets stink, whatever. Like they've been stinking for a half decade, if not longer. They can just keep on doing so. The Colts have playoff aspirations, and I think that's why you want Rivers to be there to elevate your offense a bit more. I would not play Alec Pierce whatsoever. There is zero scenario where I'm playing Alec Pierce. Philip Rivers, before he retired 4 years ago, didn't have an arm strength to make throws to Mike Williams very effectively. It was Mike Williams doing jump ball stuff. No way I think Alec Pierce does that. I'm worried about Michael Pittman. I think that's more of a chemistry thing. You have to have a rapport to make those throws. I don't think Michael Pittman could be a guy that I want to start. I don't know about Jonathan Taylor. I mean, like, you have to play Jonathan Taylor, but ideally the offense is revolved around a bit more of the read option stuff, which at least Riley Leonard could do. Well, if Leonard's not playing, Philip Rivers, the grandpa at 44 years old, is definitely not going to be any threat. So you can kind of box it in Jonathan Taylor. Maybe Tyler Warren is fine because you think about the radius of the throws that Philip Rivers can make and comfortably throw to. You can kind of have Warren just crumple down within 5 yards and make that. But I would argue that every single Colt player has their fantasy value dramatically affected to the point where it's very frustrating because they got you here to this point, and I wouldn't play them in the fantasy playoffs.
And Joe, just a quick comment here, because again, I was just when you said it, man, I can't believe when's the last time we would have seen something like this with 44-year-old Rivers. And I just started thinking back, and I was like, man. And this doesn't qualify, but just something crazy the Colts also did that seems hard to believe. They got Jeff Saturday off the ESPN desk to be their head coach in the middle of a season after firing a guy. We're like, wait, what? Is this for real? And then he was never heard from again. And he has a job at TV again, but they hired an ESPN analyst to be their head coach because he's sort of a legend with the team in the past. Oh my goodness. It's, wild things happen with the Colts. Go ahead, Lerch.
No, I agree. Boy, to see a whole team, and you hit on it there, Joe. How Colts players have carried a lot of teams. Like,
yeah,
what do? You got to play Taylor. You got to play Warren. You probably got to play Pittman unless you have better receivers on your bench. I mean, it's just going to have to grin and bear it and hope. But this is going to be fascinating to see a 44-year-old guy off the couch. just playing football. I mean, I'm absolutely all in on the intrigue, whether it's a disaster or not. I almost don't care because I want to see it to believe it. I want to see if it's a train wreck and it's a head rolling down the highway, or whether or not everybody's okay. Like I gotta see it. I just have to. It's just one of those things. That's crazy. What about big time matchups this weekend, Joe, that could yield fantasy points? I'm always talking to you about, are there some high scoring games? Are there some games out here that really could produce some points? Do you see any on the radar this particular weekend?
Yeah, there was a handful that when I had posted my article earlier this week, just going over the spreads, because I pick every game against the total, and then I also pick against the spread. Has not been very good for me this season. I know you guys do that competition. I change my picks every once in a while, but pretty consistently. So you guys are aware my record is fantastic. But I'm actually really intrigued in the Texans Cardinals game right now. That total's at 42.5 points. Texans obviously need this one to stay in a front runner for an AFC playoff spot. The Cardinals have been really good about getting some backdoor covers in. It's not a spread conversation, but all I'm saying is I think the Cardinals offense can at least score some points, even if it's in the fourth quarter when the game is out of reach at that point. And that's all it really takes to say Michael Wilson needs to be in your starting lineup, because I know some people are concerned with how the Texans play and how great that defense is, and I do think they're the best defense in the NFL. But I think C.J. Stroud and company will score plenty from the Texans side, and therefore I believe the Cardinals, at least in a junk time production, can do the same. So I believe actually Cardinals-Texans can be one of the higher scoring games, and Vegas is not nearly at that point as well too. And then looking at your guys, the Giants and Commanders, I kind of think they're going to be offense on that side too. I'm going against Jackson Dart in a couple leagues, so I guarantee Dart's going to have a massive fantasy performance, as that always works for me. And I think Marcus Mariota could do the same sort of thing, even though the pass rush is good for the Giants. Their secondary, while they're actually really good on a per number basis about allowing receiving yards, they give up a ton of explosive plays. So I put this on the RotoWire social, I think on Instagram, whatever it was. I don't mind playing Tim McLaurin if you have him. I think he's got a chance to get like 2 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown, and you might be in that spot where that makes a lot of sense to have McLaurin in sort of that range too. So I think Commanders, Giants, also one that we're not discussing enough that I believe will have some points in that game.
Weather, another factor, Joe. Lately, I'm looking at games, of course, because we're in the throes of winter. Heck, it's snowing in good old central New York, slow to low slide. It's supposed to snow this weekend. So, we know all about Buffalo and their weather, and we actually saw it on television this past week. Chicago, the Windy City. I know Green Bay's not home this week. Kansas City is home. I mean, we've got some home games here that weather could be a factor. Have you tapped into that yet in terms of how that might play in fantasy?
Yeah, I thought I saw earlier this week Cincinnati was going to have weather too. That would be big because that is, I think, the highest total. At least it was Bengals and Ravens at one point or another, but I don't know if that's the case anymore. So relative to past weeks where rain has been as big of a factor as been snow, I don't know if it'll be as big of a deal for week 15. It'll be colder and windier, but I'm not sure this could be as much snow. It will, I believe, happen for that Buffalo game against the Patriots. I think there's going to be snow involved in that one. And then I think pretty good chance that there's going to be rain involved in the Seahawks-Colts game. Again, doesn't really matter from the Colts perspective since their offense is limited, but that might make a guy like Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, where you're kind of considering either one of those in the fringe territory. I might lean towards both as plays if the rain is involved, so the Seahawks might not pass as much. So another good thing for you, Jim, because you have JSN, of course, on bye. Doesn't matter, right? Because things work out for you, whereas I have to rely on JSN in my one league. So a lot of fun for me with that one.
I'll tell you, I was looking at a lot of the weekly projections. I mean, everybody has their own take on things, but a lot of guys still had JSN ranked as number 1 receiver this week. A little surprising to me, like you said, with the weather and the circumstances, but we'll see if that works out. By the way, today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Box Drop Syracuse, the mattress and sofa outlet, where you can save 30 to 70%. Let's just find out a little bit more about that. Then we'll come back. Questions for Joe Bartel. If you're in the comments, get in them right now. Ask Joe. Start, sit. Any other questions you have about the fantasy playoffs, he's here to answer those questions. We'll do that when we return. Considering that we sleep nearly 1/3 of our lives, buying the right mattress is essential. At Box Drop Syracuse Mattress and Sofa Outlet, you'll get a unique experience, one that saves you 30 to 70% off retail prices on top-of-the-line mattresses like Sapphire Sleep. At Box Drop, you'll schedule a mattress fitting appointment and get one-on-one service directly with Paul, the owner. No middleman. Family-owned, huge savings, no-pressure sales designed to save you time and money. And now Box Drop Syracuse has sectional sofas and love seats as well, with prices designed to fit your budget. Box Drop Syracuse Mattress and Sofas. Set up your appointment today at boxdropsyracuse.com. All right, we are back. Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital at MC Show Digital, our YouTube handle, where we just gave away earlier in the show today a Bobby Mercer autographed baseball out the door. Congratulations again to Joey Matesic, who won it. And Joey, we're going to track you down. We're going to ship that off to you, and you're going to enjoy it. Maybe you give it to somebody in your family for Christmas, or maybe you keep it for your own collection. But it's a beautifully autographed Bobby Mercer baseball in a nice little plastic carrying case. There it is. Bye-bye. Heading off out of the man-child's personal collection. There you go. Take me down.
I did it too late. My trigger was too
late,
slow.
Too late.
That's how I went, and then you put it down. I'm like, oh, and you're like, God, get me off. I'm like, I'm trying. Jeez.
All right, you're good at clicking, so I'll let you go over to the comments,
Oh,
BG, and go ahead and let's click on some comments and thoughts and people jumping in here to talk to Joe Bartel. Go ahead.
Well, because it takes a sundial to track my clicking time, I'm going to actually ask a question to get myself enough time to be able to click, and it's this. I heard some fantasy experts thrown around this week that if you were lucky enough to have Saquon Barkley on your team and still make the playoffs, and hey, actually, it sort of sets up nicely. Said fantasy experts around the world have said, Joe, do you agree with them that Saquon could actually be something here in the playoffs?
Yes and no. I had talked 2 weeks ago about Saquon Barkley as one of the guys that I wanted to trade for. Lamar Jackson was in the same spot. The rest of season schedule tool on RotoWire had emphasized Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley as the two guys that you would be willing to pay the premium to go ahead and get. That would make a big difference. And it was meant to be for also the past 2 weeks, not just here the fantasy postseason. It's been very frustrating in the case of rostering both those guys. At some point, the Eagles have to figure this out, right? I don't know why they can't. I don't know why this continues to be a struggle. I don't know why you can't get more volume to Saquon Barkley when it was very easy to go ahead and do it last year. I know that smarter people identified the offensive line being worse, and a lot more people, at least on my side of things, are saying, well, Kevin Patullo, offensive coordinator, just wants to get the personalities more involved. Like it seems to be they have to force Devonta Smith the ball, or now it's a Dallas Goedert game, or here's A.J. Brown, and there isn't really a coherent offensive strategy, which I think represents a team that has been in flux and has been in flux now for 2 months. I don't know what the Eagles' postseason aspirations look like, other than this kind of thing happened last year with the Chiefs too, and then they made it to the Super Bowl and of course got curb stomped. But like good teams can turn that around. I think Saquon Barkley's fine. I would feel very comfortable playing Saquon Barkley in the playoffs. You're hoping for those explosive games that Jahmyr Gibbs can give you, that Bijan can give you, that any running back that goes against Joe Bartel can give you in the fantasy postseason. But it doesn't seem like it always happens. So you're still happy you have Saquon Barkley, but I'll be frustrated because 3 weeks ago this is supposed to be the can't miss guy, and I don't know if that's the case anymore.
All right, let's go to some fantasy comments. First off here, I just want to cheers a fellow Kyle Pittsman in our audience. Bad shot saying, love seeing my fantasy team at 45.6 after I played one player on Thursday night with the little emoji with the shades. I will tell you this because Joe sort of said it. For those who aren't paying attention to Kyle Pitts, which I would imagine is most of America, the last 2 weeks he's just sort of been solid, double-digit points for full point PPR. And you're like, good, he's sort of found himself. And so 2 of his better games of the season, very nice. And then when he just sort of immediately got very 10, 11, 12 points. I'm like, okay, nice. All right. Okay, here we go. If this is all I get, I'm comfortable. And then I started getting greedier throughout the game. And my fiance was in the room. I'm like, yeah, get another touchdown. She said, come on, you already got a bunch of points. I'm like, I want more. So salute to a bad shot. That's not the form of a question, but just wanted to highlight
Gecko
that
over here.
Greed
is good.
Oh, yeah. What's remember the Titans? No mercy.
And by the way, before you go to the next question, Kirk Cousins, I didn't look this morning. I know a lot of people don't have Kirk Cousins rostered, but there can be some desperate souls out there who have lost the likes of Daniel Jones or somebody else here late in the season. Did Cousins have a good, I'm going to assume he had a good night at 3 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
Hits, right?
Over 330 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Like there's going to be a question in here, and maybe Boy Green while I'm bringing up Tyler Shuck or Bo Nix. And it's so funny because I'm trying to go through the list, and I whenever I'm making my waiver wire article, I just go to our site and then I search by like what's the under 50% roster quarterback. So, for example, Sam Darnold sort of on that fringe. I'd rather play Sam Darnold. I was going through that and being like, well, like I would have rather played like I think even Tua over both those guys as well too. And I had to think, what's the scenario where I would have played Kirk Cousins? I would have played Kirk Cousins over probably Shedeur Sanders against the Bears. I would have played Kirk Cousins over, like if I was trying to consider maybe Cam Ward. That was one of those. I would play Kirk Cousins over the Colts quarterback, whether it be Riley Leonard or Phillip Rivers. But like, there wasn't a spot where I played Kirk Cousins, and he's going to end up being one of the top 5 or top 7 fantasy quarterbacks this week. So it's super frustrating. To answer Old Yank's question here again, Tyler Shuck or Bo Nix, I think we're really talking about close to what would be like quarterback 29 and 28. Like I would ideally want to find, is Bryce Young available? Is Tua available? Again, is Sam Darnold available? I would check all those first. I like all those matchups instead. If we can't, I think I'm defaulting to Bo Nix because while I don't know if it's going to happen, I think the Packers might win this game, although it might be close. I expect Bo Nix to have some rushing opportunity, and I think Bo Nix can make enough short throws where maybe there's opportunities after the catch. I don't know what Tyler Shuck's going to do for us. Like, he's been playing well recently. I think he can game plan against a lot of that stuff, or at least it feels like it's easy enough to game plan for. So I just don't know if I want to trust Tyler Shuck in the fantasy playoffs as opposed to Bo Nix, who has the explosive potential we talked about earlier at quarterback.
Usually, by the way, fellas, I'll do a little parlay on the Thursday night game if I like the game and I like last night's game. I was like, oh, let me throw down a parlay. My parlay, listen to this disaster last night.
Oh, boy.
Kyle Pitts under 5 catches.
Oh.
That didn't work out so well. Kirk Cousins under 205 yards passing. That didn't work out so well. Bijan Robinson anytime touchdown. Okay, that's an 0 for 3, and let's reset and hope I'm a little bit better.
Hey, what do you get if you do the opposite? Because that's like impressive to not get any.
Bijan did score. Bijan did score.
Oh, yeah, he did on the walk-in. On the walk-in to the left.
Walk in late. Okay, I didn't see that. All right. So, all right, good. I got 1 out of 3. All right, I thought it was 0 for 3. I didn't stay to the bitter end. I was just like, oh my God, Boy Green is probably dancing in his living room right now. Got a pizza!
Oh, I was.
God.
It was
Good
spectacular.
grief.
But speaking of tight ends, let's go to another old Yank question. David Njoku or Rondé Gadsden? Where are we leaning, Joe?
Yeah, and Gadsden has been a little bit lower on my tight end list, and I actually would have probably considered Kyle Pitts over Gadsden. Like if we're kind of going that way. And again, I wasn't high on Kyle Pitts. I didn't think this was going to happen at all. But we're looking at floor plays of tight ends, and in this case with Gadsden, the offensive line issues for the Chargers have really just manifested that they can't hit the short throws and that Gadsden's having to be more of a blocker. This was an issue before Gadsden broke out. It was the same exact thing when Joe Alt had come back, then Gadsden ends up getting close to his couple best games. So I don't know how this gets rectified. I don't think this change against the Chiefs this week as well, too. I would still rather play Gadsden over to Njoku because I think the tight end position has moved over to Harold Fannin. Njoku's been banged up a bunch of times throughout recent games as well, too. And even though Njoku and Harold Fannin share the field at the same time, the way the Browns are attacking throwing to the tight ends and the way they're scheming their offense, it is more Harold Fannin involved than David Njoku. So Gadsden over Njoku, but they're probably, much like the question earlier, the quarterbacks, there are probably other people I'd be considering instead of both those guys.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to ask you about Fannin, and I picked him up off the waiver wire actually in our Champs League a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, I might play him in the flex next week. I'm already looking at next week's matchups and saying he might be worth a flex play. I mean, better than some of these goofy receivers I'm rolling out there week to week. So I might go double tight end in the old flex and the tight end spot and take my chances that I could get a little more production there. It does seem that Sanders and Fannin have a little bit of a connection, especially when Njoku's not part of the equation.
Yeah. And I know my co-host on the Waiver Wire podcast, we do it every Monday for RotoWire. Search Waiver Wire podcast, you'll be able to find us. My co-host has been a David Njoku guy for most of my career. We've been doing that show now 6 or 7 years every year. So like I think he's been slow to come around to the idea that Harold Fannin can do this independent of of Njoku being injured or not. But that was kind of the catalyst last week's conversation is, well, Njoku was out, Harold Fann's been doing. I'm like, well, Fann's still been playing a bunch. He still gets targets regardless. We're just seeing explosive plays now for whatever the reason. I think that's partially because Shedeur Sanders can make those throws. Dylan Gabriel could not. Joe Flacco didn't want to. So I'm not like, oh, because Njoku is out, then play Harold Fannin. I still have been of the opinion all year long. There's been one league where I drafted Evan Ingram foolishly that I've been playing Harold Fannin since week 4. Like I feel very comfortable saying he is the Browns offense, at least from a passing perspective.
All right, Joe, we've been go ahead. You got one more, Boy Green?
Yeah, I do have this last one, and most people think I only have 2 kids, but I actually have 3. Michael Wilson was recently adopted. He's one of my dear children, and I'm curious, how is he affected by Marvin Harrison Jr. Because
he's trash. That's how he's affected. He's trash. He's trash.
Because when Michael has been away from Marvin, he's played very well. But when Marvin came back, even though he ended up getting injured, Michael was dramatically affected. And obviously, I care about the well-being of my children. Yes. So, Joe. It looks like Marvin could return again this week.
I love how we're gonna ignore an actual question that is in the chat with Badshaw asking Jalen Warren or Breece Hall to give some self-serving Michael Wilson pump up to you too.
There you go.
Whatever about Michael Wilson. Like I think I am worried about this matchup. Texans defense really good, but as long as Marvin Harrison's not playing, and I don't know why he plays the rest of the year. Maybe he comes back next week, but otherwise, with only 3 weeks more yet to go from the Cardinals side of things, I would just want to see what I have of Michael Wilson. And I also want to see, is Brissett part of the future, or can we get a quarterback that does something similar to Brissett, whether it be in trade or free agency. Like I know, at least in Packer country, Malik Willis is being discussed a lot because he's a unrestricted free agent. Could he get a Justin Fields type contract with a different team, for example? Like that, I think that's definitely in the realm of possibility. But is that Brissett that's accomplishing that, or is Michael Wilson kind of emerging something else? So until Marvin Harrison comes back, Michael Wilson is a must play for me, regardless of matchup. And even when Marvin Harrison was available, you had Michael Wilson get 7 targets in that one game 2 weeks ago too. And to Badshaw's question, because I actually care about him as opposed to any dumb stuff with Michael Wilson. I'm playing Jalen Warren. I don't want anything to do with the Jets quarterback situation. I don't care if it's Tyrod Taylor, Justin Fields. Breece Hall is just not a play for me this week, so I have to play Jalen Warren.
All right, Joe, and we've been ending all our interviews as we lead up to the holidays here with some holiday questions. So I'll throw one at you to kind of end on a nice positive spirit. Joe Bartel, you can go all the way back to your childhood, wherever you want in your life. Joe Bartel's seminal Christmas gift. Was there a Christmas gift you got somewhere along the journey of life that you treasure or was really special to you for some reason? That first new bicycle. What was it, Joe? Tell us.
My wife and I actually were just talking about this last weekend, which is funny. I think it was, I actually don't know my birth dates, maybe, or like, I'm sorry, what date, what Christmas it was, although I have an idea. So maybe it isn't that important if I can't remember, but I got a PS2 for Christmas, and it was my first video game system. And my dad had been previously pretty against the video game thing altogether. I had a Game Boy, maybe that was about it, right? Because you'd be traveling so much or driving around that you want the Game Boy in the car. But the PS2 was the first gaming system I had. I don't know if I am where I am in my career, if not for the PS2. And for nerdy reasons, I would sit upstairs and play Madden all the time, and I would announce my own games. Like when I was in 6th or 7th grade, I'd be pretending I was one of the announcers, which, again, sounds super nerdy now. That type of stuff and my sports knowledge really came from the video games that I've done and really added to the value and, I think, interest of sports that my dad had already instilled in me, too. So it ended up being, I think, a career-defining Christmas present, and also something I still love to do today, playing video games as well. It's what I'm going to be doing right now on my off day. I'm happy I was joining you guys here for that. But I think that will be forever. One of my favorite gifts was a PS2. I think it was around like 10 or 11, something like that.
That's so cool. Love that.
Right, Joseph. Fantastic. Very nice. A PS2. I thought you were going to say your first fantasy magazine or something. Yeah, in 2002, I got this magazine. Didn't even know what it was.
I do remember my first magazine, but that was not a Christmas present. It was more like a grocery store pickup.
Right.
And I got hooked on that nevertheless as well.
Boy Green's still a big mag fan, right? You get him every year, don't you, Boy Green?
100%. Well, I've got
a
shoebox back here, and as LaDainian Tomlinson on the cover from the early 2000s. And then when we had the shift, right? Adrian Peterson gets drafted in mid 2000s, and then the front cover is LT or AP. What's the pick? Number 1 overall. And so I have very fond memories.
And it wasn't fantasy, but I remember getting the Athlon, the big magazine.
Oh, NFL preview. I get
the
that
NFL
too.
and the college preview, and you get every team, and they break out. I was like, wow,
cool.
Man, this is a lot of research. And
I still get that every year.
Reminiscent of what you guys do during the offseason. I mean, people think fantasy football ends, when the season ends and then knocked out of the playoffs. You guys get to work.
I give myself about a month and a half. That's and I catch up on all my other work that I do, but it's about a month and a half, and we're right back at it before really the off season and free agency starts. I'll have done all my research, at least from that perspective.
All right. So much love, much admiration, Joe. You guys do work awful hard, and we appreciate you guys bringing the knowledge that you bring to our show every week. Joseph, happy holidays, my friend. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next week.
All right, sounds good. Except for Boy Green, best of luck to everyone.
All right, there he is, Joe Bartel saying goodbye. We'll say goodbye as well. We'll be up in a little bit with NFL picks. Joe's in on that as well. We won't see him live, but we will tell you what his picks are. And, of course, the standings. How are we doing as we get down the home stretch here of the NFL season? That's all coming your way. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Again, click that subscribe button, become part of our growing community, and we'll see you in a little bit. Take care.